Imagine standing in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There is nothing around you but darkness, freezing water, and an enormous silence. More than a century ago, one of the most famous ships in history disappeared beneath these waters, the Titanic. But here's the question most people never stop to ask. What happened to the Titanic after it sank? Where did the ship go? What happened when it reached the ocean floor? And why does the wreck look completely different today? The answers are hidden almost 4 kilometers beneath the surface. And the deeper we go, the stranger the story becomes. On the night of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic was traveling across the North Atlantic. It was enormous for its time. More than 2,000 people were aboard. But after striking an iceberg, the ship began to sink. In the early hours of April 15th, the Titanic disappeared beneath the surface. For the people watching from the lifeboats, it was the end of a terrifying night. But for the Titanic itself, the journey had only just begun. The ship did not simply disappear into a hole in the ocean. It began a long descent through thousands of meters of dark, freezing water, and this is where the story becomes fascinating. Eventually, the ship reached the ocean floor at a depth of roughly 3,800 meters. There is no sunlight down there. The water is almost freezing, and the pressure is hundreds of times greater than the pressure we experience at the surface. The Titanic had reached a world completely different from the one it was built to travel through. And then it stopped. The wreck came to rest on the seabed, but it wasn't lying there exactly as it had once sailed. The ship had been badly damaged during its descent and had broken into major sections. Today, the most recognizable parts are the bow and the stern. They lie separated from each other on the ocean floor. Between them is a huge debris field containing thousands of objects that were scattered during the sinking. And for decades, nobody knew exactly what the wreck looked like. For more than 70 years, the Titanic remained hidden. People knew approximately where it had sunk, but actually finding it was another matter. Then, in 1985, a joint American-French expedition finally located the wreck. The discovery shocked the world. For the first time, cameras could see the Titanic again. But what they found was not the majestic ship people remembered. The wreck was dark, silent, and slowly being consumed by the ocean. And one of the strangest discoveries was happening on the metal itself. Something that looked almost like giant, rusty icicles was growing from the wreck. Scientists call them rusticles. Rusticles aren't simply ordinary rust. They are created through a combination of chemical reactions and microorganisms that live on the metal. These organisms gradually break down the iron. Over time, the metal becomes weaker, and as the years pass, more of the Titanic disappears. Think about that for a moment. The Titanic was designed to be one of the strongest ships of its era, but now the ocean is slowly taking it apart. Not in one dramatic moment, not overnight, but millimeter by millimeter, year after year. And that means something important. The Titanic is not a permanent monument sitting safely on the ocean floor. It is changing. But the wreck itself isn't the only thing scientists discovered. The seabed around the Titanic contains what is known as the debris field. When the ship sank, countless objects separated from the main structure. Pieces of the ship, personal belongings, and other objects were scattered across the ocean floor. Some objects remained remarkably recognizable. Others became almost impossible to identify. And the debris field tells scientists something the wreck alone cannot. It helps reveal what happened during the ship's final moments. The ocean floor became a kind of frozen record of the disaster. Every object has a story. Every piece of debris can provide a clue. And researchers have used these clues to better understand how the Titanic broke, apart, and sank. But there is another mystery, one that scientists have been watching for decades. The Titanic is disappearing, slowly. The microorganisms living on the wreck are consuming the iron. The rusticles grow, the metal weakens, and eventually, sections of the wreck may collapse. This doesn't mean the Titanic will suddenly vanish tomorrow. The process is extremely slow, but the wreck will not remain unchanged forever. Scientists have even identified areas where the structure has already deteriorated significantly since the wreck was discovered. Some parts that were clearly visible in early exploration images have become much harder to recognize, and that raises a remarkable thought. The people who first saw the Titanic underwater in 1985 witnessed a version of the wreck that future generations may never see. But perhaps the most surprising part is what happens to the environment around the wreck. The Titanic has become part of the deep sea ecosystem. Microorganisms live on and around the metal. Other small organisms interact with the debris. The wreck itself has become a strange artificial habitat in one of the darkest environments on Earth. In a way, the Titanic is slowly becoming part of the ocean. The ship that once crossed the Atlantic is now being transformed by the very environment that swallowed it. And there is something deeply fascinating about that. Today, the Titanic rests silently on the seabed. There are no passengers walking its decks. No lights shine through its windows. No engines are running. Only darkness, cold water, and the slow movement of time. But But the wreck continues to tell its story. Scientists study it, historians study it, underwater explorers photograph it, and every new expedition can reveal something that was previously unknown. Yet there is one final question. How long will the Titanic remain recognizable? Nobody can give an exact date. The ocean doesn't work on a human timetable. The wreck will continue to corrode and collapse over many years. Eventually, much of the structure may return to the seabed, and perhaps one day, the Titanic will no longer look like a ship at all. Just fragments buried beneath the Atlantic. More than a century ago, the Titanic was considered a symbol of human engineering. It was enormous, it was luxurious, and many believed it represented the height of modern technology. But the ocean reminded humanity of something very different. Nature is patient, and time is even more powerful. The Titanic disappeared in 1912, but its story never disappeared. Today, almost 4 kilometers beneath the Atlantic Ocean, the wreck is slowly changing. The metal is being consumed. The structure is weakening. The debris is becoming part of the seabed, and little by little, the Titanic is returning to the ocean. So the next time you hear the words, "The Titanic sank," remember, that wasn't the end of its journey. It was the beginning of another one, a journey into darkness, a journey through time, and a journey that is still happening today. Because somewhere beneath the North Atlantic, the Titanic is still disappearing, and the ocean is keeping the final chapter to itself.